Okay, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. Today is the second workshop that Hetties are doing. We're doing these workshops on the last Friday of every month between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. And today's is all about therapeutic parenting. And hopefully, today's introduction to this could be food for thought. Might want you to pursue more information to get more knowledge. Personally, I think it's always good to have a lot of knowledge around therapeutic parenting, because with kinship children, they have suffered some form of trauma, and the amount of trauma that they have suffered will obviously dictate a lot of their behaviours. Some of those behaviours can be quite distressing, can be very difficult to manage and understand, not just for you as their carers, but for them themselves. So if we can give them any information that will help them to understand what's happening in their own mind, then that can only be a good thing. And whilst I'm no expert, I'm certainly no expert, what I do understand is that kinship carers don't get immediate access to a lot of information, and any workshops or groups, etc., might take a lot of time. Understandably, there's a lot of people out there that need support, so there's very often waiting lists. So what we've decided to do is put these workshops together in the hope that they will be an introduction to help you, to help yourself, to find and access more information. But just sometimes a basic understanding is enough at the immediate time to be able to gather some form of hope to move forward, and to also understand that these children are not behaving in any way other than how they should because of their previous experiences. So there's nothing wrong in terms of what's natural, because what's natural for them is what's happening. And if we can help them to understand it, like I say, hopefully we can make some inroads into things becoming a little bit better. So I'm going to share my screen. And here we are, therapeutic parenting tools. And this is a guide for Hetties clients of how these translate to real life situations. And hopefully we will do that today. And what we're going to be looking at, we are looking at your child's brain, what bits for what, from bottom up. We're going to be looking at Dr. Daniel Siegel's hand model of the brain. And that's a video, it's a cracking video, love it. He explains it a lot better than I do. Again, back to your child's brain, the survival loop, and another video from Beacon House, which is the window of tolerance. We're touching upon parenting a child with a sensitive fight response, a wormhole back in time. And again, once we get to these bits, you'll understand what they are better when we get there. Connection, back to your child's brain, developmental trauma, and some examples of behaviours. And then after we've looked at that, we'll perhaps do a little bit of, it's called behaviours run around, and that bit was titled for when we're doing it face to face. And it's just a bit of fun, really. It's called Yes, No, Baby, So. And rather than doing the run around, if you want to run around in your own living room, please feel free to do so. But we might just discuss this or think about it, because you're watching this on a video, think about what you think is right, wrong, or indifferent. And then it's okay to get things wrong. In fact, I think it's better to get things wrong, because it helps us to remember things better once we know what's right. And then a look at communication and what's really being said. So the first bit, nice simple diagram here. And I always like to keep things simple, and the simpler the better. And again, this is another resource from Beacon House. You can see at the bottom there, www.beaconhouse.org.uk. Have a look on their page, their website, especially at the resources piece. They've got so much stuff to consider and to look at. And a lot of it takes weight off your shoulder, just knowing these things and understanding things. So have a look. There's another shameless plug for Beacon House. Cracking organisation. So as a child's brain made, or as anybody's brain made, it starts, what develops first is your brain stem, the primitive brain, and that's responsible for sensory motor input and survival. The bit that develops second is the limbic brain, that focuses on attachment and emotional development. And the third bit is the cortical brain, which is responsible for thinking, learning, language, and inhibiting. And it might also be helpful for you if you are that way inclined to think of the brain in a red, amber, green system, a bit like a traffic light. The red is the brainstem that regulates breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, survival, and several other important functions. The amber is the part of the brain involved in our behavioral and emotional responses, especially when it comes to behaviors we need for survival, feeding, reproduction, and caring for young, and fight-flight responses, which we will have heard a lot of as kinship carers, parents. And the green is the outer surface of the brain, which is associated with higher level processes such as consciousness, thought, emotion, learning, big word here, reasoning, language, and memory. And sometimes our children, kinship children, it feels like they're not able to reason. And that's simply because they're not in that part of the brain. They're not in the green part of the brain. They're still in the red part of the brain. So today's sort of information will help us to help our children to get from red to green. Fingers crossed anyway. And it can't hurt to try. As I said, we're going to look at Dr. Daniel Siegel's hand model of the brain. So hopefully, if I stop sharing, if I can. Right, stop share. There we go. I'm getting good at this. Now I want to share screen. Here's Dr. Siegel. Share. Maximize. And play. Get me. Here we go. Enjoy.
Model of the brain that I use is very useful. So if you take your thumb in the middle of the thumb, fingers up the top, this is a very useful model of the brain. And when you can actually see on the brain, and you can change what it does. So let me walk you through very basically what happens. And it goes like this. The spinal cord comes up into the wrist. And then you kind of end up in the skull, the brain stem, and the limbic area which work together to regulate the arousal, the emotions, and the fight and flight freeze response. These are below the cortex, the brain stem area. The cortex is this higher part of the brain that allows us to perceive the outside world, think, reason. This frontmost part of the brain, right behind the cortex, like this, is actually the part that regulates the subcortical limbic and brainstem areas. This regulation is very important because sometimes we can have all sorts of things happen in our life. Tired, exhausted, someone pushes a particular emotional button, and we can flip our lids. So rather than being tuned in, connected, fast, flexible, we lose all that flexibility, even lose moral reason, and act in ways that are terrifying to others, including our children. Now, you can actually bring yourself back online and come back to the high road and maybe repair your child. That's important to explain to them. But you can also use this hand model of the brain to explain to children, even as young as 5 and 6, how to understand when their emotions are rising up from the brainstem and the areas here, and how it's overriding the prefrontal area and making it so they may be about to put their limits. So I actually tell them that they're about to go put their limits. And our children tell us all makes sense what goes on emotional communication.
Sounds simple, doesn't it? If only it was that simple. And I guess for some it is. But you know what? I love how he explains it so simply. So I'm just going to get rid of that one. And now I'm going to come back to you guys. And I'll share the screen again. This time we're going back to the PowerPoint. Right, the survival loop. This is another video that we're going to be watching, window of tolerance. And this again is from Beacon House. And understanding this model can help us to interrupt that loop. Hold on a minute, it's disappearing. So how's that happen? This may help us to calm our child and to help them out of the brainstem and into the limbic and cortical brain. So let's have a look at this video, if I can. So I'll stop sharing that one. Share screen. Doing it. Share. Right, enjoy this video. I do love this video. There you go. Just having to think about that video and looking at the imagery and the animations there and how the words pop in about what can take a child outside the window of tolerance. Simple things like home time, homework, basic thoughts, and looking at the techniques and it's saying stay hopeful and calm. As adults, stay hopeful and calm. It's really difficult to do that, and we get that. It's extraordinarily hard, and you're exhausted. And it is also, we turn ourselves inside out. We're thinking, is it anything I'm doing or not doing? Why aren't things changing? I must be getting it wrong. We internalize things and take the blame a lot of the times for it, but it isn't it's not fully our responsibility. It's really, really difficult. So we get how hard it is. And we really don't want to make it look like this is a simple thing, because it's not. What it is a work in progress. What it is developing our own tolerance, our own patience, our own reasoning. And we can only do that by working on our own communication with self. And it's really important to consider that, I feel, when it comes to supporting you guys. And when I am supporting you and we're perhaps doing one-to-one sessions and we're looking at time for self, it's really difficult to ring fence that time because you're so busy, because you've got so much on, because not only are you parenting a child that's suffering from adverse childhood experiences, from developmental trauma, you've got to go to meetings. They may have other health needs, so you're constantly at meetings for either at school because of behaviour, in hospitals, GPs for associated health conditions. You're also running a busy house. You might have your own children as well as the kinship children. You might have multiple kinship children. And then there's the normal day-to-day running of everything. So we get how hard it is. But that said, it is our responsibility, and it's our love that hopefully helps you to at least try to consider ring fencing a little bit of time, because without self-nurture, without self-care, you can't stay in your own window of tolerance. So if you're not in your own window of tolerance, then it's really difficult to help the children that you care for to remain within theirs because of that exhaustion. We're not as tolerant when we're tired. We're not as tolerant when all our thoughts are, I'm doing everything for everyone else. That's my soapbox bit over. I'll go back to the PowerPoint. If it allows me to change the page, which at the moment it isn't, which is rather annoying. Oh, there we go. Bingo. Parenting a child with a sensitive fight response. Now, this might look a little bit small on your screen, so I'm going to talk through it. Parenting a child with a sensitive fight response. Feeling angry and the powerful actions that come from this can feel far safer than feeling frightened, sad, hurt, or alone. Being angry might also prevent us from getting even more hurt than we already feel. This simple resource supports those parenting or working with a child who has a sensitive fight survival response, which basically is all of you guys, I would imagine. Here we give you some of what you need to know on how to better calm the child's nervous system. So, like I've just said previously when I got on my soapbox, what you need, so it's not just me saying it, it's the experts as well. What you need: nurture yourself and accept nurture from others as much as possible. Receiving nurture lowers the risk of developing blocked care. Nurture looks different for everyone, but receiving it is fundamental in staying well. So, what is that in real life? Not saying no to your friends when they say, do you want to come for a coffee? Not saying no to people that are supporting you because you think that they shouldn't have to cope with what you're coping with. It's accepting that there's people out there that do care for you, that have got your back, but sometimes we block that. We don't allow them to have our backs. We'd much rather think, you know what, I'll just do it myself. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. And why? It's so you can weave regulating tasks and activities throughout the day. Every day, as this soothes the nervous system and eventually calms the survival response. And it offers consistent and regular doses of high nurture. Nurture activates oxytocin and opioids that lower aggression. It purposely and positively connects again and again despite the rejection. Anger often puts a wall between you and the child, and your child. Connecting with your child will help them to feel safer, lowering their stress levels. So it is easy to be angry. Of course it is. It's a natural human emotion. But by us being mindful of our own flipping lid, by us being mindful of what each situation needs, helps us to act accordingly. So our thinking habits are fundamental, basically, in our feeling habits. And how we think dictates how we feel. And we have a choice of how we can, and I know it's simple to say this, but it's work in progress, isn't it? We're working on ourselves to think differently. And that work in progress has to start with how we perceive and think of ourselves. And aside from the Hetty's workshops, so the Hetty's kinship workshops, which are done, like I said earlier, last Friday of every month, the standard or generic offer for Hetty's clients, we do lots of other workshops throughout the year, and we do have one, which is self. It's a self workshop. It's helping us to think about how we perceive ourselves, what we do for ourselves, and what it is to truly understand our sense of self. And that workshop is basically to try and help us to raise that self and be more confident, comfortable, and content with ourselves and what's happening between our ears and behind our eyes. So let's get back to what you need. Your own regulation is key to teaching your child how to regulate themselves. What do you need to do to stay regulated, especially in times of stress? You know, what do you need to do? It might be going for a walk. It might be reading a book. It might be going into a different room and thumping a pillar. It might be going out into the woods and screaming. It might be picking up the phone and ringing us guys. You know, it might be talking to a friend. Whatever it is, do it to try and. Well, you are being the change you want to see. You're showing the children that it's okay to be emotional, and you're showing them healthy ways to deal with that. What does that help us do? It helps us to siphon off the truncated response. When a child has gone into fight mode, they will need to be safely supported to discharge the buildup of anger, or it may appear later on. And it helps us to understand that you will get it wrong all the time. Model repair so your child can learn that relationships can survive a rupture. You know, you will get it wrong. And that's okay. Of course you will. Like I said earlier, it's really difficult to not be emotional, because to not be emotional is to not be human. So don't beat yourself up for having emotions. Pat yourself on the back. And if the way that your emotions have come out have been displayed in a way that you think needs to be mended, then apologize. Talk to your children and talk through the process hold your hands up and just say, I apologize, I got that bit wrong. How can we work together to get things right? And again, I know it sounds simple, but it is, if we allow it to be. It's accepting that mistakes happen. It's accepting that we're human and we're emotional. Back to what you need. Parental presence can disappear when parenting anger. Your child needs you to have it to feel safer. Structure your parental responses so in times of stress, you can maintain your safe parental presence. And the more you practice it, like I've just said, around getting it wrong, the more you accept when you have got it wrong, the stronger you will get, and your subconscious and conscious will get it right more and more, because you are working on healthy automatic responses, healthy, positive automatic responses rather than the previous negative automatic responses. And that will teach a child what is happening in their body when they go into fight survival response. Be compassionate to yourself and your child. It takes time for the nervous system to learn to not leap into survival response. Like I say, it does take time. It's a work in progress. But you will get better at it. The children will start to notice. I mean, just was it last week? I don't know. They all blend these days. But I was talking to a lady whose kinship child had been in that difficult place, but then for the first time, pretty much ever, I'd asked for a hug, sorry, my English, a hug, which is huge, it's huge. And then that physical contact and that hug, that's parental presence, that's acceptance. Safety is always the first priority. Are you and others safe? Is the young person safe? What do you need to do in this moment or for future moments to ensure safety? Do throwable objects or knives need to be put away? Is there a room that is safer than others? Do you need to ask your neighbours to knock on the door if you signal that you need help? What do you need to do to stay safe? And that's obviously fundamental. We need to be safe. So sometimes the behaviours are so dysregulated and so difficult to manage that we do feel unsafe, and we can see that it's not only dangerous for us as carers, it's dangerous for them themselves. So it is, unfortunately, looking at when things are calm, looking at each room, thinking about what's easy to get hold of, thinking about what's easily broken, and to making it more difficult, because it might be just a case of out of sight, out of mind. And if a child's dysregulated, they can see something, it's easier for them to want to grasp it. If they can't see it, they won't use it, because they're not obviously in the thinking brain. A wormhole back in time. This is another Beacon House resource. And it says it, Sam, age 10. Why do I get so angry when I'm scared? Am I a bad person? So if we've got scary, frightening things happen to us, if we experience loss and separation from our family, if we've not been loved or cared for in the way that we should have been, if you remember back, if you've watched it or been involved with it, the understanding attachment, that will trigger those memories of what we did in that one. Right, our body remembers how bad these things felt, so it can protect us from feeling or getting hurt again. And as we get older, when we experience something even a little bit similar to those past experiences, our body remembers and creates a wormhole, sending us back in time to when we experienced those feelings, sights, sounds, smells. A bit like PTSD, isn't it? If you've been in a good example is just simple, like a dentist. If you've had something where you felt pain, people then say, I don't like dentists. Poor dentists. They're just trying to help. But if you get what I'm saying, it's not the dentist, it's the memory. And when we think about dentist, for that example, we ourselves go back in that wormhole, back in time to that moment when we experienced that pain. So this is our body's way of telling us we're in danger. So we protect ourselves. Our body reacts quickly and sends us into fight, flight, freeze or collapse. To everyone else, it might not seem like there is any danger. This can make us feel lonely and sad, sometimes mean when we've been sent down a wormhole more often, you know? And it could be that for some people, just again, let's think of an example. Air shows. I mean, kids that have got, that do go into collapse because of noise. You've got ear defenders on. Everybody else is having a great time walking past. What's wrong with them? That could be the reason. Might be triggered by noise. Might be have sensitive hearing. Who knows? Not right to judge, because that just makes the situation worse. The good news is that repeatedly having safe experiences where you feel seen and heard. Let me read that again, sorry. The good news is that repeatedly having safe experiences where you feel seen and heard by the people around you, your body will eventually trust that the danger is in the past and that you are safe in the here and now. So again, it's time, it's practice, it's using the right connection, it's using the right emotions. The naughty step's not always the right way to go. Patience, acceptance, curiosity, empathy. Use those default positions. You're not going to go far wrong. Love these kids, care for these kids. You all do. And just reassure yourself that that's enough, you know? So back to that connection. For any therapeutic parenting strategy to work, some kind of connection and attunement must be present within that relationship. It's not, however, connection, it can be challenging as it can be rejected. Of course it can. I hear it so often with carers talking about how their child is, it's personal, it feels personal. They don't want my love, they don't want my care, they don't want me near them, they don't want me in their meetings, they don't want me attending anything where they're getting praise and rewards or awards, you know? So it's that kind of dynamic. And often, so our connection can be challenging as it can be rejected, and often is by children who have had early experiences of inconsistent or unsafe relationships. Therefore, we might start with developing a connection in a way that feels tolerable to both the child and the adult. Developing or repairing a connection could start at a distance and move in over time as attunement, trust, and grows. And when you talk about connection, parental presence, you've done that in possibly non-violent responses. So connection from a distance, show them that you're holding them in mind even when they're not with you. So a note in the bag, a note in the pillar. It could be simple drawing, it could be a little note, it could be a poem, it could be a joke, it could be a mixture. Surprise them for no reason with a favourite biscuit or snacks in the lunchbox to take. Send them a text or WhatsApp message, just or even a daft picture, anything. Or think of playing a 3-word story game over text, create a story together 3 words at a time, and take turns in adding 3 words at a time to create that story. You could have a special ringtone on your phone to let them know it belongs to them. Buy them a photo keyring to put on their bag. Let them know it's because you want them to know you're always thinking of them. You could have a baby monitor. Put it on reverse. Put it in the room so they can hear and see you as they go to sleep. If you've got a specific scent, perfume, aftershave, you could spray it on the sleeve of their uniform so that you're there with them. Your scent is with them. You could draw a symbol on their hand and yours every time You press it, sends a virtual hug, love, or kiss to the other person. So that's connection from a distance. What's tolerable nurture? Connecting with a child who perhaps has been rejecting or violent towards you can be daunting. Tolerable nurture offers reconnection in a manageable way to show them you are holding them in mind, even if you're in a different room. So sitting next to them to watch the TV, playing on their games with them, touching their hands or shoulders briefly when they're eating dinner, putting recent photos of you together in each room, have a visible explicit memory box of the things they have made, copies of nice text that they've sent to you, etc., kept in this special place. You could have a spontaneous home disco or karaoke, go swimming and dive for weights together, sing happy loving songs from another room and change a key word to include their name, or co-create a bucket list of manageable mini dates you want to do together and surprise or schedule this at various moments. £5 gift challenge, that could be a good one. Teaches you have £5 and 1 hour to find a gift for each other. I've done this with my kids in Poundland. Got some time and I'm not getting them £5. They're just a few things to think about, in order to get connection. Going back to the earlier picture that we looked at of the child's brain, brainstem, limbic brain, cortical brain. So the brain area, brainstem. So developmental trauma, somatic and sensory. Examples: sensory processing difficulties, high or low arousal, impulsivity, pervasive anxiety, impaired sleep pattern, poor muscle tone and coordination, taste and texture preferences. And think about all these and think about your own child. Heart rate difficulties, abnormal breathing, unexplained medical symptoms, and body flashbacks, state of fear. And again, by me saying thinking about your own child, if any of these are things that you recognize, perhaps write them down. You've got the ability to press pause. You've got the ability, because you're watching this on a video, you've got the ability to go and fetch a pen and paper, write some pointers down. And if you've got support already in place, then perhaps talk to the person that is supporting you around that. And if you've got a member of the developmental trauma and attachment team supporting you, please do feel free to share whatever it is that you're thinking with them as well, because it's better to duplicate information than to think they've already got it. So the brain area, the limbic, the green or the amber on the traffic light scale. What's the developmental trauma? Attachment, emotional regulation, and behavioral regulation. So what are these examples in real terms? Clinging, oppositional, rejecting, distrustful, overly compliant, loss of expectancy of protection by others, loss of trust in social agencies, heightened emotions, anger, fear, rage, sadness, excitement, joy, deadened emotions, perhaps, numbness, emptiness, low mood. Might be recreating traumatic situations, self-harming, have aggression to self again or others, or running and hiding. Unfortunately, very, very common behaviours in a lot of the children that we're supporting. But again, if you recognise this, make a note, discuss it. And finally, into the cortical brain, the green bit. What's in there? Self-esteem, dissociation, and cognitive problems. A few examples: information processing impairments, executive dysfunctioning, so that's problems in planning, organising and executing those. Inadequate problem solving, remembering and recalling information, identity confusion, flashbacks, disorientation, memory lapses, self-hate, self-blame, self-loathing, self-doubt, worthlessness, and helplessness. All complicated, aren't they? But all natural, all human. So again, these kids aren't doing anything wrong. They're just being products of their previous environment. And just because they're in your environment now doesn't automatically make it go away. You know that, we know that. What we're trying to do is look at different ways, more tolerable ways, more therapeutic ways to help the children and to help ourselves. So this is just a little bit of fun bit. I'm going to go through it anyway. We normally do this on a face-to-face, but we'll give you some examples of trauma behaviours, and you have to walk to the area of the brain that you think those behaviours are in. So all the things that we've just discussed, you can cheat if you want, press pause and go back a bit and have a look. There's no label on the floor. It's going to say, so think about it. You're doing this via video. Think brainstem, limbic, or cortical. It's just for things fun, and it's okay to get it wrong. So, what shall I do for this one? Clinging. Where's that one go? Red, amber, green. Let's go back. There you go. Limbic. It's in amber. Another one. What about self-hate? I think you'll get that one. If you thought cortical, you got it spot on. Taste and texture. Where do you think that one goes? Of course it is. We've done one of each. There you go. Brainstem, develop first. So sensory. There you go. So we did one of each. So communication, what's really being said. Kids say things like, I hate you. Pardon my French, fuck you. You hate me. You don't love me. I wish you were dead. So what's underneath those statements? What are the perspective? So what if behind them words and those wounding words, what's really being said is how much hurt someone is feeling? What if sometimes words that hurt, wound and confuse are actually a vehicle to getting unbearable feelings out? A way to discharge everything that's being held in the body. What we would say, a coping strategy. I mean, how many times have we discussed things together where our children have said and done things like this and vented them in our direction, in your direction? It's their way of coping. What if you're the only person on earth who can bear this torrential release of feelings? What if there's no other person who the speaker through words can take this risk with for fear of being rejected? And like I've said to you in the past, it's a backhanded compliment. I love you so much and trust you so much with my anger. Now imagine for a moment that those words simply just don't matter. Connect with the possibility that this is simply an outpouring of intolerable feelings. How would that change a wounding conversation for you? So when they're doing this, if you could think not about the words. Sorry. Like I said at the beginning, we've got some builders next month. Yeah, you just want to give them a hug, wouldn't you? If you replace those words, if you took those words out of the equation and just see the emotion, they're clearly suffering and hurting. And it's easy to say, give them a hug. They might not always want a hug, they'll reject a hug. But what you can do is name the emotion. I can see that you're really upset, and I know what it's like to feel like that. I'm not you, but I know how bad it can feel when you're in that state. I love you. I'm here for you. And if it's about safety, you can remove yourself from that place. But as long as they know, that's all you can do. And if them wounding words can be understood as simply as the way that feelings flood out of the body, we might sometimes be better able to respond from a place of empathy, you know, rather than defense against the words. We don't need to be defending ourselves against their words. We know what we're doing is the right thing. You are keeping these children safe. You are giving these children the best possible second chance after they've had the worst possible first. And yet it feels like a thankless task at times. But you have to pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, I'm doing my best. And that's all anybody can do. But don't take it personally, because it isn't. The words are not about you. They're about the past. They're about the things that they've been subjected to in the past. They're about the feelings that they are relating themselves to. Remember that wormhole back in time. That's where they are. So it's not about you. It's about where they've been. They're just speaking in the here and now. So you might want to protect yourself and your child by trying these types of mantras. Like I said earlier, it's I hear you. I'm still here. I hear you. I still love you. This will pass. We will be okay. You can be angry and still love me. I can be hurt and still love you. So another resource from Beacon House is this communication about what's really being said. So it's a shift from traditional language to a trauma-informed description of vulnerable individuals. That can create compassion instead of blame, and hope instead of hopelessness, and connection rather than disconnection. So what we say is unacceptable behaviour. How many times have we heard that in schools? Have we said it? You know, peers have said it, other parents have said it, but what's really going on? It's understandable behaviour. Of course it is. They're just displaying, they're being natural to their own circumstances. Another word, avoidant. The avoidant. What's really going on? They're in flight survival mode. They're not avoiding. They're being where they're being in the part of the brain they should be in, and it's our job to try and get it to a different place. So again, another word, what would we say? Defiant. But what's really going on? They're in fight survival mode. They're coping with a threat. Another word that we say a lot, they're aggressive. But what's really going on is they're probably really frightened. And that old favourite, attention seeking. They're not attention seeking, they're attachment seeking. We might say they're withdrawn. They're just being cautious. They've learned to be cautious. They have to be cautious. And if they're not cautious, they get hurt. Our job is to be patient, to be consistent, to use our empathy, to be curious. Another word, rude. Self-protection. That's a better way of looking at it. And a very useful one that services say a lot. Us included, don't get me wrong, not engaging. What does that really mean? It just means that they just don't feel safe yet. So we have to give them time. We have to be consistent. And unfortunately, a lot of services, right, wrong, or indifferent, can't always build up that connection when it's 6 sessions and done. Right, finally, what does being a therapeutic really mean? It is having to tolerate feeling like a terrible parent hand in hand with helping your child with the weight of their trauma. So you as the carer might feel failure, might feel stupid, might feel useless, might feel confused. You might think it's impossible and pointless. You're being ignored, you're alone, you're isolated. It makes you miserable, makes you depressed, makes you scared, makes you angry, it makes you lost. Everything feels heavy, you feel incompetent, and they should never have been allowed to do this. I am the worst. You know, if all of these things are resonating with you, take that backpack off of yourself. You're doing your best, and it is definitely the best place for these children to be with you. So lighten your own load by start replacing some of those words with "I'm succeeding," because it takes time, and it will take time. So for children, look, they're having to pick up, and you, as their carers, you're having to pick up their trauma and carry it with them. You're managing that expectation at school. You're carrying that with them, as well as the normal development. And then the kids have got all their own stuff that we've already talked about on their own backs. It's our jobs to help them to understand that and to perhaps put those things down as well. But it will take time. And that's it, sports fans, for that bit. I'm going to go back onto the stop share. Well, I do hope that it's given you some food for thought. I do hope that today's session has helped you to think about things just a little bit differently. And I hope that the information is taken in the spirit that it's been given, and that's just to help. Okay, you all take care, and I'll see you at the next one.